I, 32M, found out my fiancé was cheating with my sister 2 days before our wedding. My revenge at the altar left everyone stunned. I never thought I'd be writing this, but I need to get it off my chest. 2 days before what should have been the happiest day of my life, I discovered something that shattered my world. It started when I borrowed my fiancé's laptop to check my email since mine was updating. She'd left in a hurry to handle some last-minute wedding details, and I didn't think she'd mind. While searching for the browser icon, I accidentally clicked on her Messages app. I wasn't snooping, I swear, but a name caught my eye. My sister's. What I saw next made my blood run cold. Messages. Hundreds of them. Going back months. Explicit photos. Meeting arrangements. Plans for after the wedding. My fiancé and my sister had been sleeping together for almost a year, since shortly after I proposed. I sat there, staring at the screen, reading message after message. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll. They had been meeting at a hotel downtown whenever my sister was supposedly at yoga and my fiancé was working late. There were jokes about me being clueless. Plans for how they would continue after the wedding. My sister even had the audacity to write, "It'll be easier once you're family." I took screenshots of everything, my mind racing as I tried to process this betrayal from the two people I trusted most. I'd been with my fiancé for 6 years. My sister was my best friend growing up. How could they do this? For hours, I sat in our apartment, feeling like I was drowning. I wanted to scream, to break things, to call them both and unleash hell. But something stopped me. A cold, clear thought cut through the chaos in my mind. They didn't deserve a warning. They deserved consequences. I called my best friend, who rushed over immediately. When I showed him the messages, he looked like he might be sick. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I told him I had a plan, but I needed his help. He didn't hesitate. I spent that night making calls and arrangements instead of sleeping. The wedding was in 2 days. Everything was paid for. People had traveled. But I refused to be humiliated in front of everyone we knew. The next day was excruciating. I had to act normal around my fiancé, pretend I hadn't seen those messages, hadn't seen her laughing about me with my own sister. She noticed I was quiet and asked if I was okay. "Just wedding jitters," I said, and she kissed me and said everything would be perfect soon. I had to fight not to recoil from her touch. That night was the rehearsal dinner. Watching my sister and fiancé interact, knowing what I knew, was surreal. They were careful, no lingering glances or suspicious behavior. They'd gotten good at hiding it. My future in-laws made emotional speeches about welcoming me to the family. My parents talked about how proud they were. My sister stood up and spoke about how happy she was for us, how she couldn't wait to officially call my fiancé her sister. I got through it somehow. My friend stayed close, ready to intervene if I lost my composure. But I held it together. I had a plan. The morning of the wedding arrived. While my fiancé was getting ready with her bridesmaids, including my sister, I was setting things in motion. My friend helped me distribute sealed envelopes to the ushers with strict instructions not to open them and only to hand them out when signaled. As guests filled the venue, I stood in a room alone, trying to breathe. My father came in to give me a pep talk, telling me how marriage was the greatest adventure. I hugged him and wondered how he would feel in an hour. Finally, it was time. I took my place at the altar. The music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle, my sister last, giving me a big smile I now recognized as completely fake. Then everyone stood for the bride. My fiancé appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant in her white dress, her father beside her. She looked beautiful, and for a second, I felt a pang of what might have been. Then I remembered those messages, and my resolve hardened. She reached the altar. The officiant began the ceremony, talking about love and trust and honesty. I could barely hear him over the pounding of my heart. When he asked if anyone had reason to object to this union, I glanced at my friend in the front row. He nodded slightly. "Actually," I said, interrupting the officiant, "I have something to say." The crowd murmured in confusion. My fiancé looked at me, her eyes questioning, a nervous smile playing on her lips like this was some kind of joke. "Before we continue, I want to thank everyone for coming today to what was supposed to be a celebration of love and commitment," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Unfortunately, I recently discovered that my fiancé and my sister have been having an affair for the past year." Gasps echoed through the venue. My fiancé's face drained of color. My sister, standing with the other bridesmaids, looked like she might faint. "I have proof," I continued. "And rather than quietly canceling or going through with the sham of a wedding, I decided you all deserve to know the truth about the kind of people you're celebrating today." I nodded to the ushers, who began distributing the envelopes. Inside those envelopes are screenshots of just some of their conversations. I apologize for the explicit content, but I didn't write those messages. I just found them. Complete chaos erupted. My fiancé lunged for me, screaming that I was ruining everything. Her father grabbed an envelope, opened it, and his face contorted with shock and disgust. My parents were frantically opening theirs. My mother started sobbing. My father stood frozen, looking at my sister with disbelief. My sister tried to run out, but my friend had positioned other friends at the exits. She had to stand there as people read the evidence of her betrayal. My fiancé's mother was shouting. Guests were standing, some leaving, others frozen in shock watching the scene unfold. I walked calmly to the microphone set up for the reception speeches. The reception has been paid for. I announced over the din, consider it my parting gift. The bar is open. Unfortunately, I won't be staying to celebrate my humiliation. I wish I could say it was nice knowing most of you. As I walked down the aisle alone, people reached out, some offering comfort, others too stunned to do anything but stare. My fiancée was on her knees, her perfect dress pulled around her, mascara streaming down her face. My sister was backed against a wall, surrounded by angry relatives. Outside, my friend was waiting with a car. I got in without looking back, and we drove away from the chaos. I had arranged to stay in a hotel that night and fly out the next morning for a trip that was supposed to be our honeymoon. I decided to go anyway, alone. The aftermath was nuclear. My phone exploded with messages and calls that I ignored. According to friends, my fiancée was kicked out of her parents' house when they learned the full extent of the betrayal. My sister was disowned by our parents, at least temporarily. The family was shattered. Some people said my public revenge was too harsh, that I should have handled it privately. But after reading those messages, seeing how they laughed at me behind my back, how they planned to continue lying to my face for potentially years, I couldn't find it in me to care about sparing their feelings or reputations. It's been 6 months now. I'm in a new city, starting over. I've blocked my ex and my sister on everything. My parents are struggling to hold the family together, torn between their anger at my sister and their instinct to forgive their child. Some extended family members have taken sides, creating rifts that may never heal. I still have nightmares about those messages, about standing at that altar. Sometimes I wake up wondering if I could have handled it differently. But then I remember the callousness in those texts, the complete disregard for me, and I know I made the right choice. If you're reading this and considering betraying someone you claim to love, especially with their family member, remember my story. Remember that actions have consequences. Remember that some things, once broken, can never be repaired. As for me, I'm slowly rebuilding. There are good days and bad days. I'm in therapy, working through the trust issues that now color every interaction I have. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this betrayal, but I'm trying. And at least I didn't go through with marrying someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome in her real relationship. I don't regret what I did at that altar. Not for a second. Some say revenge doesn't help heal the pain. Maybe they're right. But watching the shock on their faces as their carefully constructed lies crumbled around them, that moment of justice, of refusing to be their victim, that was worth every penny of that wedding. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you for all the support. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, they really thought they could continue this after the wedding. According to the messages, they planned to be more careful, and my sister was going to start traveling for work more often so they could meet up. 2. No, I haven't spoken to either of them since that day. My parents have tried to arrange a family counseling session, but I'm not ready for that and don't know if I'll ever be. 3. For those asking about the honeymoon. Yes, I went alone. 7 days in Bali by myself was actually surprisingly healing. Highly recommend solo travel after trauma. 4. To everyone saying I should have confronted them privately. Maybe that would have been the mature thing to do. But after seeing them laugh about deceiving me for a year, planning to continue doing so for who knows how long, I couldn't give them the dignity of a private confrontation. They didn't give me the dignity of basic honesty. 5. And yes, I'm doing better now. Taking it day by day. Thanks for all the kind words from strangers on the internet. It actually means a lot.